was a telephone booth.
That's right.
One of the last.
And you were in the telephone booth.
You know,
I was inside.
I never told our listeners because, well, time goes by. This has been one of the greatest associations of my life working with Bill Luxton, and you kind of kept things going. As I sat in that telephone booth, poor Bill Shatner is inside, and what no one knows is we had to stop tape because the lines were getting cut up, and it was 20 below zero.
It was a little chilly, and someone brought you some hot chocolate.
Which is great because I'm allergic to it,
right.
And as he handed it to me, I screamed, no, I'll collapse. And he goes, what are some of the other
Remember
things?
the flying saucer when I was out here introducing the flying saucer show? Well, there was a car went by with headlights that looked like a flying saucer was going over my head.
Well, what we couldn't always see is that all our subjects, of course, were on the ground there. Right. And two of them, when they hallucinated the saucer landing on the roof of the studio, started to take off for the downtown area of the city, which panicked me staggeringly if the police saw these two people going there. Tonight, Bill, and I say this to our listeners, I'm going to do an experiment, an effect, after the two girls who are authorities on Russian ESP join us, an effect that I've spent maybe half of my life working on. It's been a dream of my life, and I want to share it with the viewers. Who knows whether it's going to succeed or not, because 50% of the time I've done it, it's failed.
Okay,
so you're going to
leave you here.
You're going to go inside.
Going.
We're going to do a rather special test in a few seconds.
Okay.
So, Bill, I'll see you shortly. Let me know when you're in there.
I will.
Meanwhile, as Bill steps inside to a studio audience, which, folks, in essence, I have never seen, I've never met. I haven't even done a warm-up, and in most of my programs, I'm very frank. I will walk out in the audience and spend maybe 30 seconds, a minute or so with them explaining how I want to concentrate, how I want to picture their thoughts. Well, I've not met this audience, even in building up some familiarity. And in today's program, I'm going to reverse the experiment. I'm not going to try to perceive anyone's thoughts. I'm going to do just the opposite, to project the thought. And I would suggest that those of you at home, if you want to participate, don't leave the sets because you're going to break our continuity of thought. But if you have a pad or a piece of paper right by your table, pick it up. Otherwise, as you listen to my voice in a few seconds, close your eyes and imagine with your eyes closed you are looking at a blackboard. Is Bill there yet? He is
right
there,
here,
Bill? Are you out in the studio?
Yes, I'm here, and I've got that jet-propelled
You've got the famous ping pong ball.
Right.
Well, I've never seen the audience, but still, I think it's even more by chance. I want you to throw the ball over your head, and I'd like whoever catches it to quickly stand. If it hit an aisle, and I'm watching you, I can't tell. Will the person who has it stand, please? Has anyone in the audience got the ball? Gentleman right over there. Maybe Bill, if the gentleman will come down and join you up front, I'd like to find out his name, and if he has ever spoken to me in his life.
What is your name, sir?
Then I'd like him
Govro.
to desist from participating. What's your name, sir?
Claude Govro.
Bob?
Claude Govro.
Claude? Let me ask you this, Claude. Have we ever met before?
No,
You have no idea what I'm going to do. Am I correct, sir?
that's right.
No one has told you. Am I correct, sir?
You're right.
Fine. Now, Claude, listen to my voice. Can you see me on a monitor in some way, Claude? All right, fine, Claude. And I ask our listeners out in the viewing audience to also concentrate. In my hand, if I can show you this, I have a deck of playing cards. I'm going to wait for the camera to be on me. Actually, just as I climbed into the car, even Bill does not know the card, I turned a card over and I placed it face down. It's from another deck. Another deck. Now, Claude, as you look at the monitor, and as our viewers at home concentrate, Claude, I want you to look at the monitor, look at me. Now, Claude, close your eyes. Let any card, Claude, out of a deck of 52 project in to your mind. Since I have no conception of time at this moment, I don't even know how much time has gone by. Listen to me, Claude. Is there one card out of all the rest which seems to persist the most in your mind? If so, name it out loud, Claude. What card, sir?
4 clubs.
The 4 of clubs. No one told you, Claude, think of that card. It simply presented itself in your mind. Claude, if you will, as I said, I chose a card which I placed face up. It happens to be the 4 of clubs. And as I said, Claude, I chose that card from another deck, which indeed, my friend, makes it the only red-back card in the entire pack. You got it, sir, and folks, I'll be there to join you in a very few seconds.
We have two charming guests with us tonight, the authors of a fascinating book entitled Psychic Discoveries Behind the Iron Curtain. Would you welcome, please, Lynn Shroeder and Sheila Ostrander.
Great audience. Sit down and join us, computer. Of course, I always get confused because I never know which is Sheila and which is Lynn. You got to tell me.
Have to make you guess.
What do you think? I'm a mind reader?
Yeah, mind reader.
Which is Sheila?
I'm Sheila.
You're Sheila
Yeah.
and you're Lynn.
That's right.
Well, I'll tell you, we've been happy with the success of the program, but I have been wanting to have you folks on a long time. The book you wrote about ESP and all the related areas behind the Iron Curtain has been kind of a breakthrough in the history of this field. And yet, when you went to Russia, at first, you weren't particularly interested in doing this, were you? Or were you searching for this subject?
We were sort of. We had been writing about Russia in about 1965, and we noticed that in their publications, suddenly top scientists, chemists and physicists and people like that were saying telepathy probably exists and clairvoyance and all these things, and that science should look into it. And this was really kind of astonishing because it had been taboo under Stalin.
Oh, sure.
And here was the so-called materialistic communist society wanting to look into this. So we began to correspond with them. And we
you
wrote
went to a conference, too, didn't you?
Yeah, in 68.
Yes,
So-
we received an invitation to a conference on parapsychology in Moscow, and it was very curious because the invitation had a typographical error in it, and it said, "The Society of Fiendship wishes to invite you to Moscow." So I thought it was very appropriate.
Freudian slip? Did you, what did you find as far as phenomena and manifestations that were either discussed or shown when you went out there?
I think there were quite a few. The difference is the approach. They were looking at things physiologically and saying, like, what's happening inside Kreskin, say, when he can do these marvelous things. And one of the things they got into was called Kirlian photography. It was great fun. It shows a sort of surround of color, an energy surround around the human body, around all living things.
Which a lot of our viewers would think in terms of as auras, I
auras.
guess, huh, in our culture?
What psychics have always said, that there's a colorful surround, and if I look at it and say, if I were a psychic, gee, maybe you're going to have trouble with your shoulder, or I can tell something about your emotions, or it may have something to do with healing. And the Russians went into this, and they can make it visible so all of us can see it, instead of just a psychic.
It showed, you had some pictures in your book of a person who was very tranquil and more or less peaceful, and there was an altogether different picture of apparently, I hate to use the word halo, but the aura, that seemed quite different. Do any of our scientists in this country agree with that kind of finding?
This work has now begun to be researched here in the United States, and there's a lot of work being done at UCLA, at Stanford,
Dr.
the Stanford
Moss,
Research Institute, Newark College of Engineering. The list is really becoming enormous, and there was a conference held in New York just this spring, and about 500 people came who had been doing research. And apparently there is even a medical journal that's dedicated the whole October issue to it.
Yeah.
So we're very encouraged to see the work that has been duplicated here.
Journal of the American Psychoanalytic Association, I think, devoted the whole journal to it some months ago. What about, because so many people are watching me as a performer, it really interests me that in staid Russia, there has been a man long before the present regime, I mean, it was when Stalin banned all research, that had been pretty much established even then, a man by the name of Messing. Would you tell us an anecdote or two, and the fact that he was allowed to perform, even though his phenomena couldn't be explained?
Well, Messing is one of the most fascinating people. This man is now in his 70s.
That old man, yes.
He had gone to Russia to escape the Nazi invasion of Poland, his native country, and when he got there, of course, he said, there's no such thing as these mental tricks that you're doing. And
the communists said this to him as an
even
entertainment.
then, and he had to overcome this. And one of the people who tested him directly was Stalin. And Stalin said, I'd like to see what it is that you do. And he asked him to rob a bank mentally. And
Stalin gave him this as a test.
His task. And he
I've never been asked to do that in my life.
Don't give him ideas.
And he had to go to the teller and write on a slip of paper the amount that he wanted, which was 100,000 rubles, and the teller handed the money over, thinking this was the required slip that had been signed. And afterwards, of course, he had to take the money to Stalin and show him, and then he was required to take it back. And it was then that the teller came to and fainted with a mild heart attack at the...
And as a result of this, Stalin allowed him to travel and tour the Soviet Union during the entire period when the researchers had to keep things pretty quiet.
That's
didn't
right.
they? Well, when we come back, I'd love to devote a whole program sometime to their writings and findings, but there's some film which they have brought from Russia, which I find absolutely fascinating. So stay tuned. A few seconds, we'll be back again. That I foresee. I understand that the film that you brought out of the USSR, you didn't make it invisible, but some of it was surreptitiously done, huh?
You might say that. A little clouding of the mind.
Clouding of the mind, on the border. And I asked, and when they said it, I said, I won't develop it any further, but I asked if you were going back very shortly.
And we said probably not, because we were officially banned in Russia, which may be like banned in Boston, but anyway.
Let's sell more books. Tell me, even before we get into the film, there has been limited interest in this country in the area of psychokinesis, and yet most of our viewers, anybody who's ever watched a science fiction show like Star Trek, knows the term psychokinesis. Children know about it. And now, all of a sudden, the past 9, 10 months, a year, writing is appearing on the ability of the mind to control objects, not just our body. And I wondered if your writing had something to do with it because of things you saw regarding psychokinesis. Did you see something, or did you hear about something?
Well, a little bit of both. This one woman who's a housewife in Leningrad, Nelia Mikhailova, who'd been really...
Kind of a legend.
Yeah, she's become kind of famous. She was the center of great military, political, scientific interest in Russia for about 10 years, because she supposedly had this power, mind over matter. And I think why the Russians are into this, because you might ask, it's easier to pass the salt than to strain that hard and make it move,
right,
is they're looking for an energy. They believe that there's some kind of an energy associated with certain psychic events that the mind can control, that minds perhaps could turn on machinery eventually, or could have something to do with magnetic tape and maybe sort of mix up the computer now and then. So they're searching for an energy.
Also, what interested me is a number of writers had expressed that by explaining a lot of parapsychology in physical terms, they could help even undermine organized religion, which has always been part of their philosophy. That was kind of a surreptitious aim. I don't think they're going to succeed in doing it, because whatever the good Lord gave us as an ability is only proof of a greater knowledge and power. Now, did you ever meet this woman?
No, we haven't, but fortunately, quite a few American scientists have.
Dr.
Krippner had, Dr. Montague Ullman, Thelma Moss from UCLA. And also a woman from the Edgar Cayce Foundation, Elsie Seacrest, who worked a lot with Cayce, so she knew pretty good psychics.
Do we have is that what the film is about?
Yeah,
yes,
maybe we should take a look.
Can we see it now, and then maybe it's actually a silent film, correct?
Yes, and we'll tell you.
Good, great.
Here she is. This is Nelia Mikhailova in Leningrad, and she's attempting to warm up her PK ability by causing the needle of a compass to revolve.
PK meaning psychokinesis.
That's right. And once she's able to turn that needle, she claims that she's able to cause any type of object to move, whether it's magnetic or non-magnetic.
Now it's moving.
Now,
as she holds her hands over it,
she can cause these objects to move at a distance without the use of her hands as well. This is really just the beginning warm-up. She's caused things such as a raw egg in a salt solution sealed in an aquarium 6 feet away from her to separate the yolk from the white of the egg.
Separate the yolk from the... They used to have to spin an egg to do that.
Yes, and here's some of the other objects. They include things like vertical cigarettes, matchboxes, silver salt shakers, just a wide variety. In fact, it's been rather funny when people have gone in from the States.
The salt shaker is moving.
And at dinner, with the Intourist guide who hasn't been warned, she'll cause the food to move across the table, and this comes as quite a shock.
It would to me, too.
Having dinner, and here are a group of matches, and you'll notice
just the rolling on the table.
Many different directions simultaneously, which is interesting. The scientists in the Soviet Union have studied her physiologically and found that at the moment an object moves, the brain waves and heart activity begin to speed up tremendously, as well as the force fields around her body, and that they all beat simultaneously in rhythm, and that this sort of vibration that's set up is in some way responsible for changing some sort of gravity force around the objects.
It's amazing. The film is intriguing, and I know, looking on both sides of the question which the girls have done, Sheila and Lynn, there's always the question of how accurate the films are, but something seemed to have been happening. And when we come back, I'm not going to duplicate what she has done, but I think because the climate has changed today, to have an object move like that years ago would have been considered spiritism. We would have misread it. Today, it's considered the control of the mind. And I'm going to show something which you people will witness that I've worked on for about 15 years. It was a dream of my life. and only succeeded in mastering perhaps about 4 weeks ago. We'll do that in just a moment. Sheila and Lynn, and I do know your names. I've had enough time to practice. I am going to do something. It's kind of a first in my career that I tried a little while ago with the girls, and it failed. I say this unabashedly. It totally failed, and we like to chance it again, certainly with all of these witnesses here. This is not spiritism. That's the beauty, as we planted the seed earlier, that a lot of so-called mysterious phenomena must have natural reasons behind it. This is only a duplication of what might have been done years ago in a seance that today some would call telekinesis or psychokinesis, or maybe it's something else. Now, Sheila, and let's stay right there for a moment. I have my sheet of glass, which is over here, and it's plastic. We'll set it across the two chairs. And the only reason I'm doing this is for critical reasons. So to cut off from all other physical contact what is being placed here. And actually the modalities, if we will, for the test, Gesundheit, I projected probably a sneeze to my audience at this moment, is the glass, the goblet itself, which I'd like you to examine, and the ball. In fact, I'm going to mark the goblet, if I may, Sheila, by placing this tape around it, because inside the confinement it may not show. And Lynn, if you'll hold that, we'll just place this around here to mark it at all times. I think, Lynn, the most important thing about the ball, because this is almost the key setting, is that not that there are no wires or threads, that's most obvious, but if you'll squeeze it, there are no electronic devices. We do know in modern times that this could be a solution to a problem. So you don't mind holding the ashtray and leaving me free of that for a moment, if I may, but I'm going to place these. In fact, I have got to position them so that my mind, more than anything else, is clear on this. The candle is what worries me. This is a seance-like situation, in a sense, which is why we're changing the lighting and what have you, to bring it to truly a seance-like situation. And we will place it here for the time being, standing as it is, placing the ball at one part, the glass at the other. May I ask, as a matter of fact, if we will, to memorize these positions, and would you step a little bit to that end over there, and I'd like you to step over there. We'll place the ball about here, where I think it can be seen. The glass, which can be seen, of course, is about there, and let's move this across for the time being. Again, I don't know if I gave a clear picture, but the ball there, the glass about here, and I should have in my pocket a stick or a pen to point out the positions of both. Now, I don't believe in witchcraft. This is being done by natural means, by the way. I am not a supernaturalist in any way, shape, or form. You have the ashtray for a moment. This candle is quite honestly going to play a key role in this particular effect. If you will both take that and come forward, and when you take it apart, because magnetism could play a picture in this, I'd like you both to examine it, if you would do me the favor of doing so. There is nothing attached inside it. There are no magnets of any kind. Would you take one of the pack of matches? One should work. If that doesn't, I think we've got more. Let me step away while you do this. Would I ask you to light that, please, if you will. Now, it is a black candle, symbolic of the Black Mass, but I believe that's superstition. The Russians would be the first to say it is superstition. Sheila, I'm going to ask you to step to your side of the cabinet and Lynn to the other, and both of you walk behind the cabinet, if you will, please. Sheila, I'd like you to place the candle in the middle of the box, please. The ashtray on the seat of the chair. In fact, would you stand on that side of the seat, then, if you will, Lynn? Sheila, stand behind the cabinet. Now, if I were to use wiring of some kind, well, I would have to have a gremlin in there to suddenly attach itself. But also, I would have to have communication, even if it were electronic devices from various sides. You can see under it. Sheila is behind it to control that. Lynn, if you will move just a little bit to your right, one step or so. Our audience now, from every angle, as our camera pictures us, our cameras, the millions of viewers, and our studio audience can control the frontal area. Many mediums years ago would not allow this. Obviously, a woman in Russia who was doing this under even more test conditions is allowing it at all times. Do me a favor, folks, because if psychokinesis can work, or mind over matter, why can't a group of us cause a sponge ball, a little piece of sponge ball, to start to move along the floor of the cabinet I don't know, because of the failure a little while ago and also because of last night in 6.5 hours, having only success the last 45 minutes, I don't know if we could even cause an upward movement, because to do such a thing, the ball would have to move upward. You'd have to think of it moving upward about 8 inches, coming over the glass, and then suddenly further over the glass to the right, and then releasing itself. But if it didn't do that, the only thing, ladies and gentlemen, I can hope is that the ball moves, and not just an inch or two, but move to the foot of the glass. Sheila, would you move up to the back of the cabinet, please, and blow out the candle? The candle was only a fixation device. Hypnotists would have given it other attributes. We bring back ourselves away from the seance situation. Lynn, I'm going to ask you to move the candle, if you will. Place it on the chair. And Sheila, would you approach the back of the cabinet? Reach over with your left hand. I'd like to see how far, if at all, the ball moved. Move the curtain all the way to the other end, if you will, please. All the way. And ladies and gentlemen, it's succeeded. Would you come over here, Lynn, and just take the ball out yourself? Succeeded. No effect of any kind. It's a good work. No effect. And the glass stayed as it was. Ladies and gentlemen, only those around me, obviously, and those close to me know the trauma with which I attempted this on a second time. And yet, I think while we must take this as a lesson, because I did this more as a stunt than to prove anything, we have to take some of the Russian research with a grain of salt. That's beside the point. They're opening a door to a new perspective, and I think we had better open our eyes. Be the good Lord willing, I'll see you in the near future, and meanwhile, I think you should study Psychic Discoveries Behind the Iron Curtain. It's a lesson in a new perspective on the potential of the mind. Good night, everybody.